Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto 2 Blue Vortex manga chapter review. This one's going to be for chapter 13, which is called Prescience. So, pretty notable chapter here. Very text kind of, dialogue heavy chapter, but I think filled with quite a bit of interesting information. There's obviously a major Kashin Koji kind of power reveal that we get here that feels like it changes everything to a certain degree. It's maybe not that extreme, but it's a notable reveal that certainly makes you think about a lot of things. But even in the other parts of the story, outside of the flashback that we got here, we did make some interesting story decisions. Like, we're de-escalating the action scene here, and so we're gonna go into, I guess, some cooldown chapters and build up again to the next time we have our big conflict. Will that be where everything kind of happens and we get the big fights? Like, how many chapters are we talking about here before we're into sort of like giant big fight territory or not? Hard to say. But I'm glad that we have kind of decided a bit on a direction for where we're heading here. So I like the progress. I like the info in the chapter. So in my mind, one of the better chapters we've had in a while. So I'm pretty pleased with what we got here. So let's jump into it and go through it in kind of detail. Cover page here is Boruto once again, which I think is fine. It's a Boruto flashback chapter. Backstory makes sense. We have to, I think, have Boruto on the cover every so often, but we'll see what they do going forward. From there, we jump into the opening pages here. So this is the scene where Jura decides to retreat. Now, the reason he decides to do this is because Mamushi, who is revealed to be, that's the name of the bug divine tree character, he pops his head out of Jura's cloak and is basically like, hey, Matsuri has returned and her investigation tells us that Boruto has an accomplice. And it seems like off screen it is revealed who that is. So they know it's Kashin Koji, I guess. And so Jura's like, that's his source of intel. That's why he knows about the Thorn Soul Bulb and all this other stuff, even though he shouldn't. And then speaking of that, hey, you're holding Hidari's Soul Thorn Bulb. Did he get himself killed? And for all of these reasons, Jura decides that, okay, we have a formidable foe here. We can't let Hidari's bulb rot. Let's retreat and plan what we're going to do next. So Jura leaves just noting how lucky Boruto is. It's like divine intervention that Jura is forced to retreat here and not kill Boruto. So then we get Boruto waking up, but he remembers the flashback that we're going to get here just before he wakes up. So we jump then into flashback. And this obviously takes place after the chapter 5 of 2 Blue Vortex flashback, which is Sasuke sort of sacrificing himself to allow Boruto to escape, Sasuke ending up trapped in the tree and so on. He's running away from a bunch of shinobi in kind of rocky terrain. He's kind of surrounded. And then a toad appears before him and is like, I finally found you. And the toad says, there are 20 shinobi in the area. You're trapped. You don't want to kill innocent people. Your only choice here is to touch the toad's back and you'll be, sent somewhere else. And I think you prefer to be where I'm going to bring you than here. So Boruto is forced to touch the toad. And yes, he is summoned by Kashin Koji to what's revealed to be one of Orochimaru's abandoned bases that's near the Land of Wind. So we've seen this before. I like the use of this. I think it makes a little bit more sense than Kashin Koji just randomly having his own separate hideout base that he constructed or something like that. No, he goes to one of the ones that's not in use. I think it makes a bit of sense. With the note here just being that I further camouflaged the already inconspicuous entrance with Genjutsu, so that's going to keep them safe. He does explain that the toad is a scientific ninja tool. It's not a real toad. Kashin Koji, was talking to you, not the toad. the fun detail here, Boruto doesn't know what Kashin Koji looks like until Kashin Koji's just like, oh yeah, the mask. You only know me wearing the mask. And so this is where the connection happens. And yeah, I am Kashin Koji, an artificial creation brought into being by Sanzu Amado. So yeah, just because it's been a while since we've properly gotten into the details of Kashin Koji, so reminding us that, oh yeah, Amado created him, he was a Kara member, created in the same way a lot of the other Kara members were. Yeah, this is important information to have. We address how Boruto knows Kashin Koji, you killed Master Ao, and you tried to kill me and Konohamaru. But then, we address the idea of, have you been Uzumaki Boruto from the moment you were born up to now? And Boruto's like, wait, how, like, you know of omnipotence? Like, that's why you're asking me this. Like, because this is Boruto's first time realizing that someone is kind of, like, figuring this out, logicking out the idea that Boruto and Kawaki have been flipped, basically. And we address the idea of how does he know this? Because Boruto's stunned at this. Kashin Koji reveals, because I knew that the possibility this would end up happening was high, ahead of time. And the idea is like, wait, what? And we get to this in a second. They leave us hanging on this a little bit as to like, wait, what do you mean by that? You knew ahead of time that omnipotence could happen. Kashin Koji apologizes for attacking him. He was just following orders. Boruto understands this. He's done missions as well. And he also understands the idea of not being able to like vindicate oneself or like be aware that everyone knows the truth about you. He knows that all too well. He explains that I was created by Amado and in order to defeat Ishiki and stop his planet-destroying divine tree plan. But, his power far exceeded any of our imaginations, and I was happy just to fulfill my duty of basically dragging Ishiki out of Jigen and making him vulnerable to a certain degree. So he had no regrets and he was about to die until cinema scroll kind of across the screen here. The film reel comes across. He gets these visions of the future. And we get the idea that these were glimpses of future realities, apparently. And he sees all this stuff happen at once. We see basically what happens. Baryon mode, Naruto, Sasuke's involved here. Ishiki's death in front of Kawaki. Ada doing the omnipotence thing. Code being involved, of course. But then, an interesting vision here. 5 Divine Tree characters. Hidari, Jura, Matsuri, Mamushi. And then a 5th one, who they zoom in on, and we obviously don't know. We weren't aware there was a 5th one. What's going on here? The visuals give the idea that it's likely based on Shinki, who is, of course, the Sand Shinobi, who we've seen in like an earlier episode, chapter of Boruto. He was in the movie. You've seen a lot more of him if you've seen all the anime, but still not a character who's really been too involved in the manga. But I think is a character who makes sense to bring into things to bring the rest of the world into play. That everything up to now has been very Leaf focused. I think we do need to bring the other nations in on this, so we have a full like lineup of characters about this, and the idea that potentially, I guess, Shinki has maybe got caught by some of these claw grimes and is now in a tree, might bring like Gaara into play and stuff like that, which is an interesting kind of proposition, because the chapter ends with what I'm guessing is going to be effectively the birth of this character, which I love that because we're doing sort of future time travel-y type stuff, that we get the reveal here mid-chapter and then the build up to the reveal at the end of the chapter. It's a fun sequence. But from these visions, this is why Kashin Koji decides as he's dying that, oh, Ishiki dying, like me setting the stage for him to be killed, isn't enough. Stuff is still going to happen after that. The world is still at risk. The Ten Tails itself needs to be destroyed because that's the thing that puts the planet in danger. And this is why he retreats kind of almost randomly at the end of that fight to live another day. he then studies his ability to figure out, like, okay, this is what's actually happened, this is what I saw, understand what his ability actually is effectively. And they address the whole omnipotence thing, why he figured that out. And then Boruto asks the big question: what is the ability that you have, and how do you randomly have it basically now? So he explains that Amado probably told you about Otsutsuki Shibai. The Otsutsuki who devoured countless planets long ago, acquired all sorts of shinjutsu, the divine jutsus, and was even called a god. Each of us Kara members who was given enhanced modifications by Amado received transplants of Shibai's cells without fail, in the hopes that we would manifest at least one of his many shinjutsu. Though whether we'd successfully gain any ability was a matter of luck. Then we address the sort of the successes and the failures within Kara. So Code, Demon, and Ada are the successes, because Code has the claw marks, Demon has his attack reflection ability, and Ada has other godlike abilities. I'm just noticing this now. Interestingly, they spell her name differently here. They do A-I-D-A instead of E-I-D-A. I assume that's a typo, unless they're changing her name, but they don't tend to do that typically. But anyway, whatever. Yeah, Ada has her abilities we know about quite well. But then we address the sort of failures, apparently, which is Boro, Delta, and Kashin Koji. Boro, of course, is dead. We didn't see him do anything super special. Delta is still in play, so she could potentially have an ability, because the reveal is, of course, that what happened to Kashin Koji is that as he was dying, his shinjutsu emerged close to death, and he calls it prescience, the ability to see all possible futures. So very cool here. It potentially gives maybe Delta the option to, like, maybe she has a secret ability she doesn't know about in the future. That's interesting and intriguing. But yeah, he addresses the idea of the future isn't simply one straight path. Many narratives get snuffed out based on effectively what actually happens. What road you take at a crossroads gets rid of certain possibilities to happen, but then opens up new ones. We just addressed that it's a battle royale between destinies, so to speak. He sets a few examples here. One fate that we've already escaped is, what if Ishiki had killed Naruto? That would have resulted in Ishiki resurrecting in Kawaki's body, and then the divine tree would have been planted and the planet would have been destroyed. Another thing that could have happened is that the day Kawaki caused the Hokage to disappear, what if Kawaki had killed you and then also, kill Sarada Uchiha, who tried to help? In this case, you and Kawaki would never switch positions. Kawaki would go on to lose to Code, and he would then be devoured by the Ten Tails. And that would also then lead to the tree growing, the planet being destroyed, that whole idea, and variety of other examples along those lines. And he just points out that our future has continuously been walking a dangerous tightrope for several years now. That the idea seems to be that without Kashin Koji maybe directly being super heavily involved, we have been leaning more towards more and more of the outcomes being destruction of the planet. We need to move things back on track so that more of the possibilities are the world is saved type thing. So we just addressed the idea of Boruto's going to believe Kashin Koji because he believes him through the omniscience thing, and so they are going to work together here. We then address, but wait, your ability, how do we actually take advantage of it to make something good happen? So the advantage is intel. He points out, for example, your life on the run. I could prevent you from ending up cornered, like I did earlier. And Boruto's like, oh well, yeah, that's certainly helpful. The big one here, I could impart to the present you moves and jutsu the future you has mastered. Wouldn't that accelerate learning and optimize training? And Boruto's like, whoa, that's possible? And he just points out, there's no timeline paradox. I'm just relaying what I saw. It's totally standard procedure. And I'll also tell you how to rescue Uchiha Sasuke from his tree. So this is how all this like extra information comes from, is that it's not that he happens to have like intel on this that he got from someone. He saw the future that these things would come into play, and from that has kind of figured out what the details are. This is how they know about the soul thorn bulbs and all this sort of stuff. Is he has seen the future where these things are revealed like in detail, basically. But I love the detail of this is why Boruto is so powerful right now, is that he obviously, Kashin Koji, the implication here, he has seen a future where Boruto, I guess, becomes a full-on adult many years into the future and has all of these crazy jutsu. So the idea is, in one scenario, it is possible for Boruto to get to a stage where he has these 20 jutsu that make him incredibly powerful. I'll just teach those 20 jutsu to him now, and that will put Boruto in a much better position to have the paths he goes down be in our favor from a much earlier point, and it would wipe out a bunch of like failure states, effectively, I suppose, is the way to view it overall. And yeah, saving Sasuke, this is why they know, you know, it can happen. There is a future where he is saved, and so they know how to accomplish that, basically. Now, we don't address specifically the idea that, like, show us what Kashin Koji saw to know why he knows this, but that's the implication. But first of all, the very worst future that's possible right now is that the Ten Tails breaks free of Code's control, and it evolves in a new way, and this is these divine tree people, beings who possess individual minds. He hopes to avoid this, but he feels that it's pretty much highly likely how that this is, you know, this will happen. It's in basically all of the futures. So it's just to point out that there was a slight opportunity at this point to avoid the emergence of the intelligent divine tree characters, but it was basically inevitable. We can't stop that, but we have to stop them. The reason for this, and the reason it's so dangerous, is that Jura, in many futures, kills Boruto. And this is why it's such a threat, of course. Many futures show it happening. And yes, this would then result in Kawaki getting devoured, divine tree grows, planet dies, and that's what they want to avoid at all cost, basically. So yeah, there are infinite possible futures, and they're hoping to, one by one, get onto the right path, basically. Boruto points out that whether it's stopping a divine tree plan or whatnot, I'll never agree to any option that involves killing Kawaki. And this is where we get that Boruto is still here in the middle of all of this, because knocking sense into my idiot bro and restoring the Uzumaki household is my goal. That's a nice to have, just the idealism coming out here in the middle of all of this crazy technical details. He's like, I will not do anything that involves me ever having to kill Kawaki because I want to knock some sense into him and for him to still be my brother, basically. And I have to get my family back. That's what his goal is. So it's nice to have that sort of reiterated, basically. So yeah, he knows what he has to do. He puts on Sasuke's headband at this point. He says, I'll finish off Code and Ten Tails both. And so this is the idea of, this is when they joined up, and they've been together sort of since, leading up to basically where we are right now. Obviously, we don't see the training of Boruto, but there's the implication that, okay, this is where he teaches him. Will we see more of this? Maybe a little bit, but it feels like we have most of the key information from this backstory that we actually need. We're getting towards the end of the chapter at this point, so we cut to Boruto waking up at this point. So Sumire is with him and says, like, you know, don't move. Konohamaru is looking at Sarada's injury, which is that, remember, she got Biju bomb sniped through the arm, and it's noted here the bone is fine, but I think the nerves are damaged. But Sarada just wants someone to take care of Boruto. This is where Himawari wakes up. She rushes over to Sarada and heals her immediately, using her, Nine Tails powers, of course. And they're all shocked by this because, you know, this is their first time really seeing it like up close. And she says, it wasn't an extensive injury. This should, you know, fix it fully. Then they point out, hey, help Boruto too. But Kawaki is like, hey, no, don't go near him. He then says, like, as Sarge is about to like kill him for this, don't misunderstand. I'll let her heal him, but we got to do something first. And so he's like, yeah, Konohamaru. And yeah, Konohamaru puts these special custom sealing jutsu cuffs, which will prevent him from using any sort of jutsu on him. So he gets basically the Star Wars binders kind of put on him here on the back. So I guess this limits him from, even if he forms the like hand signs for, say, like the flying Raijin, I guess he can't do it. This is where Kawaki comes over and finds the toad. And in his head, he's thinking, hey, isn't this Kashin Koji's? But then the toad kind of like disintegrates. It goes away, which is, it's nice to know that it was just a ninja tool here. It's not like a real toad here. So nothing died here. But it disappears, and he doesn't tell anyone that he saw this. So it's sort of the idea that, I guess, Kawaki has more or less figured out that I guess Boruto's working with Kashin Koji, which is interesting by itself. And we cut back to Kashin Koji just noting that, like, this is a bothersome turn of events, that Boruto has been captured by the village, basically. This is the last scene with Boruto in the chapter. So just to sort of have a little bit of a discussion here, I think this is a good move for the story, that they have Boruto captured. I guess a variety of characters are going to talk to him because we have major threats and Boruto has all the information. I think he's going to convince people, or they're going to see sense and realize he is better off as an ally against a, you know, joint enemy here. And we might see some sort of an alliance formed here overall. Because let's not forget that there's also the idea that Kawaki's lies are slowly but surely beginning to fall apart. More and more people, it seems like, are beginning to see through the omnipotence. And with Boruto now back, I think that's going to happen more and more as time goes on. Especially given that Boruto now has knowledge of certain things in the future. And I guess on a technical level, he should have answers to quite a lot of questions or mysteries that they maybe encounter. So he should have an idea of what to do, but the idea maybe is that this is a little bit more of an unexpected pathway that they've gone down. Obviously, anytime you have a future sight character, it's a tricky thing to navigate, because why should Kashin Koji react to this? Because surely he has seen a possible future where Boruto gets captured but still succeeds. But then how many of them has he actually seen? How can he activate this power, or, you know, that sort of idea? Does it just happen randomly? We don't really know. So how in control of all situations is Kashin Koji when it comes to things, and in terms of, you know, he can prevent any future from happening, or, you know, are there limitations basically to his power is the idea. But still, at the very least, I would say this prompts a discussion between Kawaki and Boruto addressing Kashin Koji. Now, what exactly Kawaki would have to say about that, I'm not sure. But at some point, I think Boruto's going to have to work with the village against everyone else, the Divine Tree characters, especially if another one's now coming into play, which is what this final scene is about. So the Thorn Soul Bulb of Hidari is placed on the kind of cube in the middle. The tree, again, this is the thing that Hidari used to heal himself in the last chapter. The trees come in and heal him. And it basically seems like it does that from the soul bulb here. So Hidari is fully restored here at this point. Jura asks him about any problems. There doesn't seem to be any. Your identity appears to be strong and intact. At this point, Matsuri is like, hey, Jura, isn't it time, you know, for that? I'm chomping at the bit to see what's gonna emerge. As she picks another Thorn Soul Bulb off one of the trees. So she gets it into her hands. She again places it on the kind of the box in the middle, and I guess she's going to activate this, make it its own individual. So this, I'm guessing, is going to be the birth of the Shinki divine tree character, the fifth one that we saw already in the middle of this chapter. So the 4 is going to become 5, and I wonder what the details are here when it comes to, like, you know, this character maybe naming themselves. That's going to be an interesting one. Jura, it seems like, is going to be the one to do that. So there's still the mystery surrounding Jura, because we don't know, like, if he's based on a character, if he just maybe is literally this specific Ten Tails as an individual, because he's like the first one, or if there is something special going on here. There's a bunch of stuff like that that I think is quite interesting and intriguing. But certainly, if the setup that we assume is going to be the case remains, this character is going to be basically born with a specific target character in mind, and it's going to be somewhat related to whoever the source is. So if it is Shinki, I'm guessing Gaara is probably going to be the target, but, you know, how significant or not is that? And then is this character just a way to bring the other nations into play, other villages? I'm guessing that is part of it, but we'll see if there's anything particularly unique that happens with the introduction of the 5th character. Because it's a really interesting cliffhanger, but it's also kind of like, did we need it? And it's not that I'm against it or anything like that. It's just an honest question of, like, I was pretty happy with the 4 characters that we had here. I didn't feel like we were missing anything. I guess we'll have another fight, and like I said, sand characters coming into play, I think, could be interesting. So that's my thoughts on the chapter. Definitely a very interesting one. I think the prescience ability here, the ability to see the possibilities in the future, is a super interesting thing to do, though I definitely think they might need to explain some of the limitations of this. Obviously, the idea is that when you get to each individual situation, it can just pan out one way or the other. Like, there are possibilities, and, like, you can't guarantee you go down one path. So I guess there is always a failure state in every single situation. It's just you hope you get as few of them as possible, and you avoid the path to complete failure is just kind of what they're trying to do here. It certainly makes Kashin Koji feel, I think, a lot more important and impactful as, like, a kind of a leader character on the hero side of things. Of now suddenly we have a good guy character who has information about what's going on here, and you can see by the fact that I think the Divine Tree characters retreat, they know they need to almost, like, counter the idea that they maybe know that Kashin Koji has this ability, that this is something tricky that they maybe need their 5th member for. So that could be an interesting one. Maybe the Shinki character is going to target Kashin Koji, bring him into play. Because if they lose Kashin Koji, if Kashin Koji is killed, they lose a major source of information, certainly. And then the details of, like, why he has it, because he, like the others, has Shibai DNA inside of him. It opens the door to Delta potentially having some sort of a special ability at some point, which I think they might actually do something with that, but I don't really know what the full scope of that necessarily is. But yeah, they've once again brought up the super interesting point of Amado at some point had access to the DNA of effectively a god, which is this thing that I just struggle to, like, accept in a way in my mind, that, like, he, using science, basically has given godlike abilities to a variety of other characters. Like, can you show me this? Like, where did you get this from? Was it Ishiki who gave you, like, the body, the corpse of Shibai? What's the situation there? There's something that I feel is needs to come back into play, because let's not forget, we still have the whole Amado and Amado's daughter kind of plot point, reviving her at some point. You know, we need to address that, Akebi. But Amado just remains a super interesting and intriguing character. But yeah, they're my thoughts on chapter 13 of Two Blue Vortex. So very positive from me on this one. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts were. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.